Chris Lighty had an advanced copy of the Chronic before it came out. You know, rest in peace, Chris. And he walked in and he was like, let me tell y'all, let me show y'all why Dr. Dre is the greatest ever. He fast forwards to Explosive. And the simplicity of it, the sparseness of it. This is Just Blaze, and this is my top 5 producers, DOA. It's kind of ironic that I'm here because people that know me know that like making lists of top anything is something that, you know, I don't really do. And the reason for that is there's so many people that have contributed so many great things to our culture. To narrow it down to 5 is very difficult because every time you come up with a list, then you remember somebody else that you might have forgot about. And also music is subjective, you know, culture is subjective. So how you feel on Monday musically might not be how you feel on Tuesday musically, you know what I mean? So it's a constantly evolving thing. Our art is constantly evolving. With all that said, it's very difficult to take something as vast or take the history of our culture as vast as it is and narrow it down to 5 individuals or 10 individuals or even 20. It's a very difficult thing to do. Number 5, I would have to go with Marley Marl. You know, Marley, about 4 or 5 years into his career as a producer, professionally at least, you know, there was a record called The Symphony, and it featured Big Daddy Kane, Master Ace, Craig G, and Cool G Rap. It was the first time that I can remember, you know, even though all those artists were on it, it was his record. And it was the first time that I could think of that a producer, DJ, had an album that featured all artists that were kind of under his tutelage and under his wing. But my first time hearing that record, you heard that and the way Master Ace set it off, you know, it was like the perfect marriage of beats and rhymes. And for me at that age, and I think I was maybe like 11 or 12 when it came out, it was one of those moments that reaffirmed that this is what I wanted to do, you know, with the rest of my life. Marley revolutionized and basically invented the way that hip-hop production was approached by his usage of sampling. He was the first to sample in the way that he did, which was like, you know, taking a kick from one record, a snare from another record, a hi-hat loop or hi-hats, you know, from another record, and putting them all together. Before that, you know, people were just kind of looping drum breaks or using drum machines, you know, with pre-programmed sound. And he was the first to really take drum breaks and chop them up in the way that he did. Number 4, I would have to go with the Bomb Squad. They were the masterminds behind the sound of Public Enemy. Being my cousin's house on a Friday night, and this record comes on, and it's just... And it was just... The song was called Rebel Without a Pause. It was unlike anything you had ever heard before. It was like chaos and energy harnessed in sonic form. That's the best way to put it. You know, a lot of people in my age group, obviously, you know, we've heard this record a million times. So to us, we kind of take it for granted at this point. But you got to think back to like 86, 87. Music did not sound like that at all. What Hank and Keith and Eric and Chuck put together, it was quite literally mind-blowing. I feel like with the first Public Enemy album, they were kind of finding their footing. And then Rebel Without a Pause came out between the first album and the second album. You know, that album itself is definitely in my top 10, maybe even top 5 albums in terms of my favorites that revolutionized the way music sounded and felt at that time. Again, game changer, culture changer, and Chuck's voice, you know, Chuck was part of the Bomb Squad as well. Aside from being a rapper from Public Enemy, you know, he was also one of the producers. And his voice, his deep, booming voice, he knew how to position it amidst all that noise and chaos to make his voice the lead instrument in this bed of insanity. How low can you go? I'd be remiss if I did not put the Bomb Squad on this list because they changed the way our music sounded, they changed the way our culture approached music, and you know, and nobody's been ever been able to duplicate that since. Number 3, I'd have to go with the Rizzo. One of our daily rituals, you know, growing up was making sure you were in front of the TV at 3:30 to catch Ralph McDaniels, the Video Music Box. You know, he would say like, oh, this is VJ Ralph McDaniels, you know, and this is new music from such and such. and you go into it. There was no announcement for this. It was just, and there was this white thing on the screen with something that looked like a bird, and it said Wu-Tang Clan, and you're like, what is this? It didn't sound like nothing you ever heard before. It was very much also like this sound of unorganized or of organized chaos. You know, actually kind of similar to the to Public Enemy. I want to say that they even had similar, like these similar wailing horns, the same way Rebel Without a Pause had the Protect Your Neck had the it was like, yo, you couldn't figure out what was going on. It was totally musically wrong. The video was beyond low budget, but it was just wrong. When I heard Protect Your Neck, my world stopped. They've impacted our world, like even beyond hip-hop culture. They just impacted our world in a way that most hip-hop collectives cannot say that they have. You know, and Rizzo was the mastermind behind all of that. He's also a visionary. You know, and that's why, you know, he has to be on this list. You know, you can't have a top anything hip hop list without having Rizzo on it. Number 2, I would have to go with Timberland. There's a few people, you know, myself included, that can say that they've made records that have impacted the game and impacted culture and have kind of changed, you know, the way music sounded at a certain point. Not to the way that Timberland has. He made records 20 plus years ago that you can still hear the influence or the impact of now. If you looked up unorthodox, you know, in the dictionary, like Tim's picture should be there. You know, after coming up under, you know, under the Jodeci banner and up under Devontae, and then finally breaking out on his own with Genuine and Pony. But the first time you heard Pony, you were like, what is this? You know, wow, wow, with the video game sounds and whatnot, and it was just like, huh? But it was dope. It was so dope. But again, unlike anything you had ever heard before. Then he comes back with Missy and totally just changes it again, changes the style again. He starts developing this halftime or double time thing. You know, I'm not saying that he was the first to do double time. He was the first to do it where it sounded like that. Every time there was a new Timberland record out, you're like, who? What? To this day, I still can't understand what goes on in his brain. Then you fast forward and you get the big picture. Come on, man. Like, my number 1 has to be Dr. Dre. I don't even know where you start, you know, but from NWA to now, he has consistently been consistent, for lack of a better word, but he has consistently provided classic music, classic moments, classic sound beds with an approach to sonics that are quite literally unmatched. I didn't get up on Eazy-E right away. My first exposure to Dre, as we know him, you know, I knew the old World Class Wrecking Crew records and a lot of the, you know, the older stuff that he was doing, but for me it was the first time I heard Straight Outta Compton, and the angst and the rage and the passion that you felt from that record and that you saw in that video just kind of quite literally hit you like a ton of bricks. As different as it was, as alien as it was to me, it was still very, very much rooted in the hip hop that I loved. It was basically a West Coast approach to the Bomb Squad sound. Very sample heavy, using the same breakbeats that the East Coast had been using, but he was taking all these traditional East Coast breaks and flipping them on their ear and putting his touch on it. And then you go through, you know, 100 Miles of Running, and you know, you just keep going on and on. And every few years he's coming back, and he's not just coming back, he's reinventing not just himself, but he's reinventing culture every time he does it. Like my approach, which is kind of like a wall or barrage of sound, and my records are very dense, makes them difficult to mix sometimes. Whereas his records, especially in that era, might only have 5-6 elements. Drums, pianos, bass, you know, keys, strings, and that's it. And he knew how to give each one of their elements their own space to breathe. And that's why his mixes hit so hard. I've actually spent a few months with him in and out, you know, at the studio, just going through records and just watching him work. And it was kind of life-changing, because you actually got to look behind the curtain for the first time. I got to actually physically see the amount of work that he put into it. When you see that kind of dedication, you know, you realize how well deserved all that success is. My number one is Dr. Dre. I am a producer, DJ, engineer, songwriter, just an all-around music dude. I've worked with artists such as Jay-Z, Eminem, Lil Wayne, Drake, Rick Ross, Mariah Carey, DMX, Busta Rhymes. There's a lot of people. I've done a lot of things, you know, and I'm just happy to still be here. Not a lot of producers can say that they've been doing this for 20 years and are still rocking. So I'm just happy to be here. This is Just Blaze, and that was my top 5 producers, DOA.